Hi, everybody. So today we're going to learn a little bit about division with two-digit divisors. So there are lots of different strategies for solving division problems like this. We are going to use partial quotient. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how you would use partial quotient with a problem like this. And then you'll have some time to practice it. And remember that this is a 5th grade skill that we're just giving you a little bit of an introduction to. So here we have 168 divided by 12. So I'm going to write 168 over here, and I'm going to draw a line because I'm going to be keeping track of how many 12s I've used over here. So with partial quotient, I want to start by thinking to myself, how many 12s go into 168 that I know for sure? It's always easy to start with an easy number like 10, if you can. So I know that 10 12s or 10 times 12 makes 120, which is less than this, so I could start there. So over here, I'm going to write 10 because I'm going to be using 10 12s. And since 10 times 12 is 120, I'm going to subtract 120 and see where that gets me. So 8 minus 0 is 8, and 6 minus 2 is 4. I'm left now with 48. And I need to think to myself, how many 12s are in 48? And I know that because of my multiplication facts. So for this one, I know that there are 4 12s in 48. So I'm going to put the 4 over here. And 4 12s is exactly 48. So I have no remainders. So the answer to this problem is whatever this adds up to. In this case, 10 and 4 is 14. So the answer here is 14. Let's try this one. This one's a little different because this first number is much smaller. So I have 68, and I'm trying to figure out how many 17s go into 68. I don't know any facts involving 17. I don't know what 17 times 10. I know 17 times 10 is 170, but that's way too much. So you have a couple options here. This is a pretty small number, so you could just go 1 by 1 and subtract 17 until you figured out how many 17s there were. However, I want to get there a little bit faster, so I'm going to start by taking a guess about how many 17s are in 68. I'm going to guess maybe it's around 3. So I'm going to quickly over to the side figure out what 3 17s is. Okay, it's 51. So I wasn't exactly correct, but I got pretty close. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to put a 3 over here, and I'm going to subtract 51. And I get exactly 17. So now I need to think to myself, how many 17s are in 17? 1. So I'll subtract that. And my answer is whatever is left over here. And in this case, it's 4. Okay, so let's try some more. All right, so here I have 252 divided by 14. So remember, whenever this first number is big, you want to start with 10 if you can. So in this case, 10 times 14 is 140, which definitely goes into 252. So I'm going to start there because that's an easy place to start. So I'll put the 10 over here. 10 times 14 is 140, so I'll subtract that. Okay, now I have 112. So I can't do 10 again because 10 times 14 was 140 and that would be too much. I could just subtract by 14, but that would take a long time. So instead I'm going to do what I did before, which is I'm going to take a guess of how many 14s are in 112, and I'm going to do it over to the side here. I'm thinking it's more than 5, but less than 10. So I'm going to go with 7. So I'm going to multiply 14 by 7 and see where that gets me. Okay, that's 98. I didn't get it exactly right, but it is less than 112, so I'm going to start there. So I'll put 7 over there, and I'm going to subtract 98. And I get exactly 14, which means it's 1 more. So I'm going to add 1 more on here. 1 times 14 is 14. So when I subtract, I get 0. And now I'm going to add up what I have. 10 plus 7 is 17, plus 1 more is 18. So 18 is my answer here. Now this one here, 130 divided by 10, so I'm going to put the 130 over here. Now, some of you might get this one super quick, and you might be able to say how many 10s are in 130, because 10s are pretty easy to count by. But let's say that I didn't know that. Remember, starting with 10 is always a good place to start if you can. 10 times 10 is 100, so it would work because it's smaller than this. So I'll put the 10 over here. 10 times 10 is 100, so I'm going to subtract 100, and I'm left with 30. So how many 10s are in 30? 3. 3 times 10 is 30, so I'm going to subtract, and I get to 0, and my answer is whatever was over here. So in this case, 10 and 3 is 13. Okay, so this is another one where this first number is pretty small, and so we have to do a little bit of guesswork, because I can't use 10 to start, because 10 times 13 is way too much. I could just subtract by 13s, but that would take me a little while. So I want to start by taking a good guess and see, where that good guess gets me. Now, I do want to point something out to you. Let's just say my good guess was, I think there are 5, and I did 13 times 5. I should right away see that is not correct, because that is too much. So remember that you always have to be equal or less than what you're starting with. So 5 was too much. So now I'm going to think to myself, okay, let me go down a little bit. Let's try 3. So 13 times 3, and some of you might be able to do that mentally, gets me 39, which does work. So let's start there and subtract 39 and see where that leaves us. Oh, it leaves us with 13, which means there's one more. I'll subtract the 13, and that means that I have 3 and 1, which is 4. So the answer here would be 4. Okay, let's look at this one. So I have 176, and I'm dividing by 11. Remember, whenever possible, I want to start with 10. In this case, 10 times 11, and when I'm multiplying by 10, I'm just adding a 0, so it's very easy for me to get there quickly. 10 times 11 is 110, which is less than this, so let's start there and see where we end up. So I'll put the 10 over here. 10 times 11 is 110, so I'll subtract that, and I get 66. So hopefully when you see 66, you know how many 11s are in 66, 6. So I'll put them over here. 6 times 11 is exactly 66, so I get 0, and then this is my answer, 10 and 6, which is 16. Okay, so here are 2 problems. I want you to pause the video and give them a try. Remember, this is new. It's okay if it feels hard, but give it a try using the strategy that I've showed you. Okay, so now that you've given them a try and you have your own work in front of you, let's see how you did. Remember, as long as you get the same answer as me, it's fine. Everybody can do it a little bit differently when we're using partial quotient. So I'm going to write out 247. Remember my tip, always start with 10 when possible. 10 times 19 is 190, so I can start with 10. I'll subtract 190 and we'll see where that gets us. Okay, so now I'm at 57. I do not know off the top of my head how many 19s are in 57, so I want to take a good guess. Definitely more than 1. I'm going to start with 2. So I'm going to put 19 over here, and I'm going to multiply it by 2. And that gets me 38. So I'm going to do that and see where that leaves me. Ah, it leaves me with 19, which means there's one more 19. 1 times 19 is 19, so I'll subtract that. And my answer is right over here, 10, 2, and 1, which is 13. Okay, let's try this other one. So I have 240, I'm dividing it by 12. So I always want to start with 10 when possible. In this case, 10 times 12 is 120. So I can start with 10. Remember, you just can't be over 240. So I'll put 10 there. 10 times 12 is 120, so I'll subtract that. Oh, so once I get 120 again, I know how many 12s are in 120 because I just did it. It's exactly 10. So again, I'll subtract 120, and that means my answer is exactly 20. All right, we have one more to try together. So we have 102 divided by 17. I picked this for my last one because I can start with 10. 10 times 17 is 170, that's too much, but 102 is pretty big. So I do want to take a guess that gets me a little bit closer. I always, when 10 doesn't work, automatically go to 5 and think of would 5 work because it's super easy for me to multiply, especially since it's a pretty big number. So I'll quickly over here, I don't know it off the top of my head, some of you might. 5 and 35. Okay, so that does work because 85 is not too much. So I'm gonna put the 5 over here and I'm gonna subtract 85. So I need to do a little regrouping here. It's exactly 17. So how many 17s are in 17? 1. End up with 0, and 5 and 1 together makes 6. So that's my answer. So you're now going to go off. You're going to complete the worksheet that's posted. Just remember, this is a new skill. It definitely might feel challenging. That's okay. You're going to learn more about how to do this when you get to 5th grade. You're just kind of experimenting with it, trying it out, and practicing it and seeing it. So do the work as best you can. We'll post the answer key tomorrow for you to check. And that's it. Good luck.